once Agneepath released, almost overnight, and I think actually more than that. In those days, used to have the matinee show. There were no multiplexes in those days, and I think by the 3 o'clock show, there was a problem because we got to know that there was a lot of supposed violence in theaters because people thought there was something wrong with the audio system because
He changed his voice for the film.
because you couldn't. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because you couldn't hear Amitabh Bachchan's voice correctly. So people weren't able to understand what was going on, and they all thought that the audio was wrong. Because my father, I remember, for the film, had created a voice which he felt suited the character, and that was a slightly gruff voice. He used to say Vijay, Tinana, John, Purana, right? And the audience thought कि ये audio में कुछ problem है because it's not Bachchan's voice. and suddenly there was this huge uproar, and I remember that they said, "Oh, we have to, we have to redub the film." And people were like, "Wait, but how can you redub the film? And what's going on?" And this issue. And my father said, "No, nothing doing. We have to read up the film. We have to read up the film." And I remember my father on a Friday evening, early evening, around 7, 8 o'clock, went into Sumit and he started dubbing Agneepath. And he sat the entire night and dubbed the entire film in one night. And for anybody who's aware of the dubbing process, usually for an entire film of 2.5 to 3 hours takes a good almost 10 days to complete, and he did it overnight. And he dubbed it in his normal voice, and they quickly went and mixed it as the reels were getting done. Mukul uncle was getting it mixed. They were mixing it, and then they would go and marry the print, and those prints the next day were all put out. And by Sunday or by Monday, they were the new prints went in the market, and that's when everybody was finally happy with that. And so I sat there at the back watching him dub, as I used to quite often. And I remember in the climax of the film, there's a sequence where Kancha China, played by Mr. Danny Nandomba, another very, very dear friend of both my parents, he's telling Vijay that come, aao apni biwi ko bacha lo, apne bacche ko bacha lo, apni behan ko bacha lo, apni maa ko bacha lo. And Mukul uncle cut to a close-up of my dad, and there's this amazing music by Jean-Michel Jarre. The background music was playing, and every time he said "Aake apni bachchi ko bacha lo," suddenly he'd blink. I said, and you see, as an affirmation. So I asked him then. I said, "Hey, why did he, take a shot of you blinking?" He said, "I did that because in my head I'm saying, yeah, I'm going to do that." And he said, "Come save your wife." And he blinks and he says, "Yeah, I'm going to do that." I said, "Yes, but for the next one, you didn't." He said, "Yeah, because that will become repetitive and it'll become amateurish." So I did 2 blinks. And then I'm just looking at him saying, "Yeah, I'm going to do all of this." So that's what I mean to say. Even a blink is something that he's thought of and planned. And he doesn't overuse it. So, that's the depth of the acting that he goes to. That's how planned he is. And till date, he's such a paranoid actor almost. Till date, he's 78 years old. He's at the top of his game. As far as I'm concerned, he's the greatest actor that ever lived. And till date,
absolutely,
his study at night, he's going to be there on his thing, rehearsing his lines for the next day and making his notes. And that's an amazing inspiration, that no matter what he's achieved and all that he's achieved, he still works so hard because he's convinced that if he doesn't work hard, he's not going to be able to do his job properly. He's never complacent.
True.
Tell me, Abhishek, is the chasm between the content and the treatment and the way stories are treated on the web series and OTT platform, is it different from the way we see films in theaters? Is there a chasm, you think? in the treatment, in the subject choice, and in the way.
Yes, absolutely. Dinesh, I can't see any of y'all. 1 second. I'm just going to rejoin myself. So just bear with me 2 minutes,
Okay.
please. Sorry about this.
No problem.
Okay, there.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I think there's having now worked in film for 20 years and having worked on digital, I definitely believe, first and foremost, that digital is here to stay and it's the future. But I think a mistake a lot of us, as in people, content creators, industry people, are going to make is similar to what we did when television and satellite television first came around. It's not another avenue for you to exhibit your work. Let's just
elaborate. What are you saying?
Let's just stick to films, for example, because when television first came out and satellite came out, and we didn't just have Doordarshan to go to. We felt that, whatever film we make for cinemas is going to work on television. And the one thing I think anybody will tell you in the last 30 odd years of television is that there are certain films that possibly might not have worked theatrically, but are roaring successes on satellite. Case in point is another film of my dad's called Suryavansham, which I think has completed its silver jubilee of years that it's been shown on Sony, and it continues to be shown.
It is always being shown on set.
Yeah,
Max.
exactly.
Awesome.
It never did well theatrically, but it's a huge hit. There's a certain kind of a film that's going to work, which is satellite friendly. So I think we have to use those same rules for digital. Just because you've made a film which is intended for a theatrical release, that does not necessarily mean that it's going to work on a digital platform. I think digital is a very different audience. I'm not saying it's a smaller audience. I think they're a very discerning audience. But also I feel that because of the medium of digital content and the intimacy of it, there's a certain freedom you can enjoy which you can't enjoy in cinema, for example. So what I mean to say is, going to a movie theater is a community activity. It's a group activity. You go with a group of friends or you go with your family. You plan in advance. You spend, if you're going to a multiplex in India, you spend a lot of money to purchase the ticket. You have your commute. You have to find parking. Then you come in, you buy your ticket, you buy your popcorn, your samosas, your cold drink, you go in there, you sit in AC. You like the film, don't like the film, you're still going to watch the whole film because you bought the ticket. You come back and then you have to take the whole family and go back. Now that's a pretty large commitment to make. And for any middle class family, you're talking about 4,000 to 5,000 rupees per outing. In 4,000 to 5,000 rupees, I can get a yearly membership to 2 to 3 digital platforms.
Correct.
Right.
So what happens is, in cinema, I have a window of 2 to 2.5 hours. In the 2 to 2.5 hours, I have to tell my entire story. On digital, I get close to 10 hours. In a web series, for example, if you're doing 8 to 10 episodes, you get 10 hours to tell your story. So you can deep dive into characterization, you can deep dive into personality traits, into subtext, etc., etc., etc. But you might have more time and can be more indulgent in your writing, but you still have to hold the audience's attention, because on digital, if you bore them for more than 5 minutes, they're just going to press pause and they're gone. It's as easy. In cinema, if you don't like a film, you're just going to shut your eyes and go to sleep and wait till your family finishes, because you don't want to get up and walk out because you spent so much money. And abhi aa gaye bhaiya AC mein baith ke hum log so lete hain thodi der. That's the attitude. So there's a completely different approach. For example, I did a show earlier this year called Breathe, and I noticed that the writing in that is so much more detailed and finite. I just finished shooting, say, for example, Ludo and Big Bull, where the writing and the characterization is different. You have to be more efficient in conveying what you want to convey for film. Because, like I said, you don't have the luxury of time. So what I would have the luxury of doing in 10 hours, to establish a character on a web show, I have to do in 2 hours in a movie. So your writing has to be different for that. It cannot be the same. The motivations for both the sets of writers has to be very different. So yes, there is a huge difference between the approaches we have. Sadly, I think it as always, is going to take us a bit of time to understand, as writers, producers, directors, actors, the difference between the two. And we're going to have to go through that process.
Abhishek, there is a formula seeping into Netflix, Prime Video, whatever these films they are making. There is abuses, there are physical intimacy scenes which are excessive. Everybody's giving Ma Ben galis. I mean, does that happen in real life? I mean,
well, evidently it does. It's that we're not used to seeing. We're not used to seeing it. I mean, physical intimacy. If it wasn't happening, none of us would be here, right? So, I think that's also the case. I personally feel it's a bit excessive. That's my personal prudish view of it. I'm not comfortable doing any of it. Physical intimacy, which is unnecessary or excessive abusing to convey something. But I understand the freedom people want in order to do what they have to do. Currently, there's no censorship on the web, so they're taking these liberties. We don't have those liberties in cinema, so you can't do that kind of stuff. But I personally feel it's a bit excessive. I think right now we're just so excited that we're getting to do it, so they're doing it. And they'll overcome it. Like I said, there's this initial euphoria about, hame ye mauka mil raha hai, chalo bhaiya hum log kar lete hain. And we can use bad language, we can show, be sexually explicit. I think they'll overcome it because it's no longer, I think the initial titillation that you might get from seeing stuff like that is going to be overcome very soon, and they're going to come down and say, bhaiya abhi kahani kya hai? So it's going to come down to that. So I think this is just the initial, when you get a new toy, you play excessively with it, and then you settle down. You settle down to the level that you have to be at.
Exactly.
I saw bits of Sons of the Soil. It's a docudrama or is it a documentary?
It's a documentary.
It's a documentary. In that, there are some I like one line particularly. Nobody likes to deal with failure. Failure is a nasty way of dealing with you. And you are saying that line. Did you write it yourself?
Write it? No. These are all completely candid interviews.
That's what I'm saying. You spoke it on the spot. You thought of it on the spot.
Why are you so shocked?
No, because
you said it yourself. Nobody give you those lines. Yes. Actors are literate, Dinesh.
Of course, I should know. I told you I've interviewed your dad 20 times. So
you can hold the conversation. Yes, yes.
And sometimes when you're talking, I don't know whether you're being, because you're so poker faced. I don't know whether you're being straight or you're being sardonic. It's kind of sardonic humor of yours. I don't sometimes get you. I get your father all the time.
That's because he doesn't speak.
Of course he speaks.
He's monosyllabic in his answers.
No, not at all. One incident I'll share of your father. He told me one editor was speaking with him, and she spoke and gave illustrations, examples. When she stopped, he said, "That all is fine, but what's the question?"
This was the example sir would always give in how to answer an interview. So
yes.
This was one of the key
point is, who was that editor?
So I can't name that.